All right, who wants to kick us off with stand up? What did we do yesterday?
We went over JavaScript.
What particular in JavaScript? What made sense yesterday?
I think, was it fetch that we talked about?
We did talk about fetch. We did a little bit of New York Times starter project.
Yeah.
What API did we use from yesterday?
I'm thinking of a key, but I don't think that's right. So somebody else can answer.
New York Times.
New York Times.
Did New York Times, but what project did we focus on yesterday? What API did we get more practice with?
Oh,
Wow.
Owen.
Owen Mitchell. Oh, wow.
Yes, Owen Wilson, the WoW API. So we got some data flowing. We practiced in Postman. We practiced in the browser. We did our fetch. Anything on any light bulb moments from yesterday? Anything unlock? How are we feeling about project week in general? How are we feeling about reviewing everything? Are we feeling a little bit more on top of things? Are we feeling behind? What's the general consensus?
Feeling behind a little bit, but better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Behind and better.
Okay. All right, so we've got two options of where we can go from class here. So I'm going to launch a poll in 1 second. We can either head towards the weather project and practice more with APIs a little bit more. And that's going to largely be API focused and practice with the DOM document get element by ID, updating our data, all of that kind of stuff. Or we can dive right into the chat project, which is going to be more of a full project setup, which is going to be more JS focused. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll, and you guys can decide where we want to head next. If we don't do the chat project today, that means we will have to steal some time on another day to do that. But if you guys really want to do the weather project, get a little more practice with APIs, we can split class and do half the class on the weather project and the other half of the class on the chat project.
I don't want to do more.
If we don't,
more,
Go ahead.
if we don't do the weather, will you at least show us where the weather API is?
Yes. Yeah.
One of the courses I actually bought on Udemy, that's one of the projects too. Weather API.
Accessing one or building one?
Accessing one.
Okay.
And then building the weather app, like building the weather app that accesses the API to bring the live data into your weather app.
Yeah.
And then,
You guys are notorious for splitting polls. We've got 9 votes in. Gonna give everyone one more chance. Does anyone have questions before they vote?
Does that help?
It did, and then someone else voted and it countered it out.
So let's start with the weather app and go to the chat app, and then we'll be able to do
All
both.
right, well, we've got 11 votes in. Last call for votes.
Which one?
Okay, that pushed us over the edge. Okay,
Which one is it?
it was close for a while, but we got to weather. Okay, so we're gonna start with weather, and then we'll figure out a way to catch up on the chat project, just because that's part of the curriculum I'm rolling forward. The chat project is the one that you're gonna love to hate, because we're gonna go through it so many times. We're gonna go through it in vanilla JavaScript first, and then we're gonna add in our React, and then we're going to add in our own API, and then we're going to do database storage and 2 iterations on that. And so the chat project is going to be that one that like you can't kill off, because we keep on having homework assignments coming back to it. However, it does seem that there is a preference to practice with the weather project. So we are going to go ahead and do that. So let me share my screen. And I am going to we are going to use the weather app that we have already used. So that is going to be week 9. I don't know what day it is, but if you guys don't want to use your own code and use the version that I have, that's a completely fine starting point. I am going to go ahead and
It's day one.
it is, yeah, for some reason I didn't
Day two.
label it as day one. It does look like it would be day one, week 9, day one, but if you don't have it, I just sent a zip in the live stream channel. You're welcome to use that instead. So I'm going to create a week 11 day 4 folder and then go to my week 9 day 1 and copy the 3 weather files into week 11 day 4. And then I'm going to open week 11 day 4 in VS Code. And apparently I just got an update, and I'm going to open index.html and go live. And we should have our weather app. And to make sure that we have the right one, if we click on Ocean City and switch to Syracuse, the data should change up here. And if that data is changing, we are good to go.
I have
we
a
are-
question.
Yep, go ahead.
If we use our current code that we used for the last one, like, did you want us to have like a fresh slate, or you didn't want us to use this, like our newer updated one?
No, if you want to use your newer updated one, that's completely fine. As long as your drop down is working up here and changing the weather data here, that's the only requirement. So if you want to use your own version of that, that's completely fine.
Okay.
Okay, so I am going to the weather data API that we are going to use is called the open weathermap.org. And this is probably the most important step because it takes a little while for their API to activate their API key. So if you're on their homepage, let me log out, or it's going to load super slow. If you're on their homepage, you're going to want to, you kidding me? I just logged out. Okay, well, it's going to make a little liar out of me. I'm just going to. Their homepage should look like this. You're going to click on sign in the top right. If everything grays out, you may need to close out of this open weather map once to know your location, and then go to sign in up at the top, and then click on create an account here, and then go ahead and fill out your username, email, and password. Once you get down here, you do need to check off these first 2. You do not need to check off these 3, but you do need to check off I'm not a robot. Go ahead and answer that and hit create. Then they are going to send a link to your email. So you have to click on that link and it's going to have you sign back in. Once you are signed back in, you should be good to go. So the page you're ultimately trying to get to looks like this API keys page. So if you can get there, we're going to take a break and make sure you can create your account, click the link in your email, confirm, and get into this like generic dashboard or API keys page. If anyone gets stuck anywhere, let me know. But we're going to make sure everyone can at least get to this point. Even if you're not following along with me code-wise, you should go through these steps because the API key does take a minute to generate and get active.
What is the URL we start at?
openweathermap.org.
This must be the one we use for private.
Were we supposed to click any of the system, product news, or corporate news?
No, you don't need any of those emails.
Not even the system news API, that, you don't need that, or just email?
Those are just email notifications in case there's something wrong with the system. So if you want to turn them on, you can, but you do not, it's not required to turn them on.
Quick question, the script.js, does it have something in it? Or did I not download this?
It most certainly does. It should have 48 lines of code in it.
Oh, okay.
Go to sign in and then create an account. So again, we're going to openweather map.org. We're going to sign in up here at the top. Then we are going on a very slow connection to create an account. And then we're checking the first two checkboxes. You can leave these three unchecked, but you do need to check I'm not a robot. And then after you do this step, you should go to your email and click the link to confirm. And once you confirm, you should eventually end up on a page that looks probably like this dashboard. Or it should have your name in the top right. If you click on that and go down to my API keys, you should be able to get to a page that looks like this. And if you're stuck anywhere, let me know. If you get stuck on this step, you won't be able to do any of the following steps that we're about to do. So super important to get this step working. And we only have 5 votes in, so I'm guessing you guys are still working on it. If you're just going along for the ride, that's fine. Just go ahead and vote in the poll so I know where people are at. But if you're still working through it and getting that confirmation email, we'll wait a minute.
I don't see the poll.
If you click on your name in the top right, Larry, and drop down to my API keys.
Say I don't see the poll.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Sorry, I thought you said I didn't see the code.
That was the first poll.
Should I create one, or if there's one there?
There's one, there should be one there, and that's going to be the one we're going to use. You don't need to create a new one.
Okay, then we're good.
Max, my screen had froze for a minute. So when we do create this thing, I see that it says billing and payment somewhere in there. Are we paying for this today, like right now, or?
Definitely not. This is a free API. There's nothing that you need to pay for. If you
Okay.
were going to use this API in a project where you were making a lot of weather calls and needed a lot of weather data, they would limit you. I think they limit you to like 60 weather checks an hour or something like that. But we're gonna be on the free tier for this project, so you do not need to pay for it. They won't even ask you for a credit card. And if they do, you're on the wrong screen.
Got you. All right, appreciate it.
Just to confirm, for when we do the consent, we're doing system news, API usage, and we're not doing product news or corporate news, right?
You do not have to do any of the consent. That middle section of checkboxes, the one right above I'm not a robot, you don't have to check any of them unless you, for whatever reason, want emails from Open Weather, and then you can check them, but you do not need to check them.
Okay. How and where will you use our API?
You can just say like education or technology. All right, we got 9 votes in. I'm going for 10, and then we'll roll forward from there.
Okay, let me find my survey.
Okay, so we got 10, so we're gonna roll forward here. So we've got this API, right? Now we need to figure out how we use it, and that's gonna be all about documentation. So I'm gonna go to their API link up at the top, and they say you get 1,000 API calls free per day. Now that may sound like a lot, but when you're building a website, think about how many people load the NewYorkTimes.com a day. Every time that page gets loaded, it may be making an API call out to the current weather, at which point you would hit 1,000 API calls pretty quickly. But in this situation, we're going to be well under that 1,000, so we don't need to click on subscribe here. What we are going to do is go to this one call API, because this one call API is going to give us in one API call the minute forecast for 1 hour, for 48 hours, the daily forecast for 8 days, in addition to the current weather information. So I'm going to click on this little thing that says API doc down here, and it says, hey, current and forecast weather data. So it says you make this one API call, and it says lat long exclude part and our API key. Okay, well, we know our API key, but let's go back to our weather map, or our weather app, I should say. Our weather app has 3 locations coded in here, but none of them are latitude and longitude. And it seems like it would be a lot to set up to store the latitude and longitude information on our side. There should be some way we can give Open Weather Map a zip code and have them give us the data that we need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll through here, and I'm going to actually open up a new tab and do a search for Open Weather Map zip code. And there's this historical weather data by state. Then there's this current weather data. So let's open that. This is what we were looking at before, though, right? With the latitude and longitude. So let me see. All the way down here at the bottom, there's a link to their geocoding API. And what Google's telling us is directly geocoding converts the specified name of a location or zip code into the exact geographical coordinates. So if we pop that open and come down, now this has exactly what we want. If we specify the city name and state code and pass in our API key, which is what they're showing this example is here, we're going to get a response back with the latitude and longitude that we're looking for. So in other words, what we need to do is we need to make 2 API calls here. The first one we need to do, we're going to pass in the name of our location, and that's going to give us the latitude and longitude back. Once we get the latitude and longitude, we can use that information to pass it into the weather data and then get the actual weather information we care about. So that's how we're going to start. We're going to open Postman. And the goal of Postman, again, versus Fetch, we're going to use Fetch eventually, but we want to play around in Postman and get it working in Postman before we move into our Fetch code, because it's easier to test in Postman. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to copy this big API URL, right? This is should be the first URL in geocoding API. And again, if you need to get to this, you can just do a search for geocoding API Open Weather Map or Open Weather, and it should be this first link right here. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to grab this API URL, and I'm going to post it. I'm going to paste it into Postman. Okay, so now we need to give it some information. So I'm going to say, hey, the city name, I'm going to replace anything that says city name, and I'm going to put in Ocean City or Syracuse or whatever. And then the state code, we're going to take that, delete that out, and say New Jersey. And the country code is going to be US. And the limit, I'm going to say, is only 1. We only want the first location that you can find. So if I hit the send button here, it's going to go through and it's going to say invalid API key. Please see openweathermap.org FAQ 401 for more information. Well, we put a lot into this URL, but we didn't put in our app ID, and that app ID is going to be our API key. So back in Open Weather Map, I'm going to click on my username and drop down to my API keys, and then I am going to copy this key right here. So if I copy that and come back to Postman and paste it, now when I hit send, I should get Ocean City, New Jersey, and the latitude and longitude that I'm looking for. So let's take a stop there and make sure everyone was able in Postman to be able to put in a location here into the query parameters and get out a latitude and longitude.
Okay, I missed the key. Okay, so where did you say?
Go back to Open Weather Map. You're going to
Uh-huh.
click on your name in the top right.
Mhm.
Go down to My
Oh.
API Keys, and then you're going to copy the key from right here.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Postman.
I just want to, cause my monitor is a little blurry. It's pretty old. We're taking out the curly brackets of all of them and just putting them all, everything all together.
Correct.
With commas in it.
Yep. The commas should stay between the city, state, and country, but the curly braces should be taken out completely.
Thank you.
Ah,
Anyone need help?
Hey, Max.
Yep.
Is it okay, if I just kind of, because it's too hard to follow along and look at what you're doing at the same time. Is it okay to just kind of watch?
Absolutely. Nothing wrong
Okay.
with that.
Because I tried to follow along and do it at the same time, and honey, I was getting lost, so I'm gonna just stop.
It's okay.
All right.
um,
Can you just run through Postman one more time when you loaded
Yep.
everything into Postman?
Yep. So when we are on the geocoding API page, we're going to scroll down to this first API call section and copy this entire URL. So when we copy it, we're going to go back into Postman. You can open up a new tab if you want to kind of clear everything out, and you're going to paste that whole URL in here. Then you are going to take out the curly braces. So when it says city name, we're going to say Syracuse. When it says state code, we're going to take out those curly braces, but leave the comma and put in the state that we're looking for. And then the country code, of course, we're going to do US there. And then the limit, we're going to take out the limit and say 1. And then the app ID, the API key section, we're going to delete that out, go back to Open Weather, go to our username and our My API keys right up here. And we're going to copy this key and paste it into Postman. And once we do all of that, we're able to hit the send button. And then we should get Syracuse coming back with the latitude and longitude of Syracuse.
so,
Max,
question.
I think it's not letting me use my API key, I think, because I used it previously with a tutorial for this open weather thing.
You can generate a new one, although it does take about 15 minutes to activate the API key. So if you're getting a 401 error, it may just take time to get it activated.
Yeah, that's what I have right now. It's saying my API key is invalid.
Okay, if you have an API key invalid, that's okay. It will activate as we work on our weather stuff.
Question.
Do you have an API
So-
key invalid or a different error?
Invalid, but I did use this before for this sort of tutorial this type, so.
I would generate a new API key and then just know that it's going to take probably 15 minutes to activate.
When you said one limit or limit one, what were you trying to, why did you say one, like what would make you
Yeah,
change?
so
it?
let's say we, instead of saying Syracuse, New York, US,
Mhm.
if we put something in here like Ocean City and we said, hey, limit 5, what it's going to do is it's going to return Ocean City, New Jersey, but it's also going to return Ocean City, Maryland, Ocean City, Washington, Ocean City, Florida, and Ocean City. I have no idea what country BB is. So what we're doing there is we're saying, hey, we don't, because we're being so specific, because we're saying Ocean City NJ, and even putting in the US in there, all we're saying is don't keep looking, just limit it to 1, and that's the one that we're going to use here.
With that being said, just one more add on to that question. Well, you could do the limits. Is there an API key or whatever that we just paste there that would request more than one city in the URL up there, or no? Like, you know how it has Ocean City, state, like, is there one where I can add multiple?
It depends how the API is set up. This API endpoint is set up to only allow one query.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if you needed other ones, you would have to subsequently make multiple queries, which is common, right? When you're using an API, ideally you would be able to do it all in one API call, but it is somewhat frequent to make several API calls if the API call does not allow multiple people or multiple queries. And so we'll get into that in a second. Zach, you had your hand up first. Do you want to share your screen?
Oh, sorry.
You have to put your volume up at your window.
Yeah. It's saying I can't share my screen.
Oh, sorry. Go for it.
All good.
Okay,
I don't
so
see a typo here.
if you have an invalid API key, you're all caught up. Just hit the send button for me out of curiosity. The blue, yeah. Okay, yeah. So this, I ripped my hair out on this last night for 15 minutes, and at 16 minutes, all of a sudden the API key was working and I didn't change anything. So what they don't tell you is that your API key just takes time to activate. So just give it a little time. And as we would start working in Fetch, you're going to start to see it working. So if you have this code 401 invalid API key, you're actually caught up to me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Stop share.
Christy, did you
Right.
have the same issue or a different one?
No, my issue is similar to what the last question John Jay asked. But what I wanted to know was, how are we going to get now, because I did Ocean City first, and then when you answered Chaz, you said Syracuse. So you guys have different information than what I have. So how
That's
are we
fine.
going?
Post,
Okay.
The data in Postman is just to test. So we're not taking any data from Postman and putting it into our JavaScript. All we're doing is using Postman as our testing environment to see if our API is working and to play around with it and use different locations and all of that stuff. So when we move, the next step is going to go back into our JavaScript and make our fetch work based off of what we just got working in Postman.
So are we going to take these numbers and plug them into that first API and use
No.
that?
Oh, we are, yes, but we're gonna do that we're gonna do that in a next step.
Oh, okay, that's my question.
Danielle.
Okay, I know you just showed this, but I was running behind. Can you show one more time where you got the API key from?
Yep,
Thank
that's
you.
coming from on the open weather page. In the top right, you should have your username up here. If you drop down to my API keys, it's gonna have the key right here.
Thank you.
And if you don't have a username up here, you have to go through the whole account creation process, which is free. Okay, we've got 11 votes in, so I'm gonna keep rolling here. I know it's frustrating to get that 401. You haven't done anything wrong. I promise you in a couple minutes, it's gonna activate and everything's gonna work great. Okay, so we've got some latitude and longitude here, right? So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna open a new tab. And in here, I'm gonna go back to open weather and I'm gonna go to this one call API. So if you click on API up at the top of the page and click on API doc, they're gonna give you another URL. And this URL says one call latitude, longitude, and exclude. But notice it says exclude here is optional. So the point here is to say, hey, if you don't need all of this data, if you only care about the current data or the minutely data, you can exclude some of that data out. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this whole API call, the URL, go back into Postman and paste, and we're going to practice the same exercise, right? So the app ID, I'm going to go back to my other tab and copy that. That's my API key, and I'm going to paste that in. And then the latitude, I'm going to pull from the data from the other call. So I'm going to copy the latitude, go back here and paste it in. The longitude, I'm going to do the same thing. And it's okay if you're using a different location. If you're using Syracuse, that's fine. And then we don't want to exclude any of this data. So I could come up here and delete this part of the URL, or I could come back into my Postman here and just uncheck this exclude. And that's just a quick way for Postman to say, don't send this data right now. So if I hit send on that, joke's on me, I now have an invalid API key. Hopefully that was just a copy and paste error. Seriously? Okay. Do I not have access to?
Max, for us to have that full of what it does, they will follow along.
Correct.
People watch.
Give me a second while I figure out weather, current weather data. Let's see. Okay, so it's just the one call that we don't have access to. Okay. Change of plans. We are going to use the current weather data endpoint instead. So if you go to the API link at the top, ignore this nice shiny one call API 3.0 new and scroll down until it says current weather data. And then we're going to click on that API doc right there. That's going to give us this URL that says /2.5. That's going to be the version number of their API. And then it's going to say weather and take the same lat, long, and app ID. So we're going to take that. We're going to copy that whole URL. We're going to come back to Postman. We're going to paste in that URL right here. And then we're going to say, hey, our app ID is coming from that other latitude call that we just made. And then we're going to take the lat data coming in from here and paste it into our latitude here. And then we're going to take our longitude, copy that, and paste that in here. And now when we hit send, we should get back, hey, the weather right now is it's cloudy. And the temperature right now is 299 degrees. We're going to come back to that in a second. Yes.
Okay, can we have a second to catch up?
Yep, absolutely. So again, the URL that we want to be using is go to the API link up at the top, scroll down just a little bit into the current weather data and hit API doc here. And then this URL is the one that we want to be using. So we're going to copy and paste this whole thing back into Postman in a new tab. And then we're going to replace the latitude and longitude using the data from our first API call that we made, along with the app ID from the first one. The app ID will remain the same. Let's stop and see how you guys are doing.
I got a quick question.
Yep.
So, okay, never mind.
Did anyone have a 401 before and no longer has a 401? Anyone else? It's still worth going through these steps, by the way, if you're getting a 401, because we're going to use this exact same URL in our code in just a couple minutes.
How do I get the Latin lodge though? Because it's
Good point. I'm going to send you the Latin long from for Ocean City so you can test with that.
okay. Thank
There you go. Stephanie, go ahead with your question.
I didn't have an error before, and I was able to see the data for Ocean City.
Okay.
And now it's giving me the 401 error.
Okay, make sure you are using the 2.5 weather URL.
Yeah.
Okay, and go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. Sure. Oop.
Click at the end of your app ID. You see that really tiny little like arrow pointer gray thing? That's saying that you have a line return at the end of it. So if you click there and just hit delete and then click send now. Oops, sorry, I mean to draw. Now you get your data.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was seeing that on Zach's screen too.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thank you for sharing, because we may just get the whole class unstuck here. Okay. So if you are in Postman,
That worked, yeah.
I can't get it to show up if I try. Shit. Okay. Okay. If you're in Postman, look at your app ID. At the very end of it, right where my cursor is, you may see a faint gray arrow. That gray arrow is trying to tell you that you have a line return or a new line or a blank line right after your app ID. So if you click in here and can move your cursor down, you need to delete that blank line, get your cursor up so it is at the end of your API key. And now when you hit send, it should bring back some data for you. Got 10 votes in. I'm gonna give everyone one more chance. Hopefully we get it to 11. So now everyone should have no excuse for getting your data back. So if you're not getting data back, go ahead and raise your hand and I can help you. Christy, go ahead.
I have my data back, but I wanted to ask you, so instead of trying to change the actual URL, doesn't it make more sense to put the value in the actual lat and long line? Yeah, because I just in case you like delete one thing too many or something. So
yeah, it's a good idea in Postman, but we are going to have to take that whole URL and paste it into our fetch code. So either way, it's good to get practice with editing the URL itself and working with the query parameters, but it's really up to you. When you're in Postman, you can use either one of those fields and it's doing the exact same thing.
yeah, because when I put it in there, it changed the whole URL section for me. So
yes,
okay.
Yep, either one is fine to use.
Okay.
Next, with that being said, with the return line character, is it possible to go back to the one click?
I don't think that's our problem. I think you have to subscribe to the one call API. And I think they're going to ask for a credit card in case you go over the 1,000 limit. So that's why I just went to the one call one. But we can certainly try.
What did you do again when you got the app ID but mine's don't look, I mean, It's the same thing that I just copied from my API key. And
Yep.
then I thought like maybe I made a mistake because when I did my API key the first time, I didn't generate. So now I've generated one.
So you
And
should have one by default when you create your account.
yeah, and that one wasn't working. So I tried the other one. So
So
should
go
I
ahead and
just-
share your screen. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong. It's just black. Can you stop it and restart it? Zoom is sometimes temperamental with sharing screens.
Can you see?
No, it's just coming in as, oh, never mind. Now it's coming in. Okay, yeah,
Okay.
it's just on a little bit of a delay. Okay, so you shouldn't have curly braces around the data.
Where? In here?
Yeah,
Up-
well, either one, up there or down there. If you adjust it
Oh,
down,
so just delete those things out of there when I paste those? Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yep.
Oh, my mouse.
And then you're also going to want to delete out the line returns at the end. So put your yep, put your mouse. Yeah, you got it. Okay, now, oh, one more. Just click down there and then delete and then hit send.
I didn't change the.
I would go copy your app ID, your API key again, and just make sure that you've got the whole thing there.
Okay, from
The open weather
It
map.
looks a little long.
yeah, too. Okay.
Yeah, I
from-
wonder if you accidentally pasted that in wrong.
Okay. And should I delete this?
Delete just the app ID part, so you can delete out everything that's in here and paste it there.
Wait, what you mean? Because I just see where up here.
Yep.
There's nothing. I can't click into.
Are you in Postman?
No, I'm in open weather. Can you see that on here?
No, you just shared your Postman screen.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Sorry.
When you started clicking all crazy, I was cracking up.
I'm crying.
Okay, copy either one of these keys.
Okay. I mean, this is the one I just created. That's what I was clicking here. Like, should I delete this? And then
No,
you were
no,
clicking
no.
Okay.
Just copy either one of them
Okay.
and then go back to Postman.
Okay. And I'm gonna try to. You guys can't see. Sorry.
Now, with that said, did you click on the link in your confirmation email?
Oh no, I didn't.
So your API key won't activate until you do this step right in the confirmation email.
Okay, I'll try that. Thank you.
And give it like 15 minutes. Like you can try it, and if you still get the 401, just know that it may take a couple minutes for the API key to activate.
Okay.
Shantina, go ahead.
Yes, I was just going to ask if you can share your Postman screen so I can see if mine looks similar.
Yes, I can. As
Thank you.
long as you've got data in here for like the temperature and the weather ID clouds and all of that kind of stuff, you should be caught up.
Yeah, okay, because I had missed the latitude and longitude part, so I didn't know what to do. So I just Googled the latitude and longitude and stuck it in there to see if it would do something. So
Cool. Yeah, we'll catch up. We'll catch up in the code. So the last thing I want to do in Postman is if we look at the API we're using, which is API, current weather data API doc. You can see down here, they're showing you an example of all the data coming back, right? But if we scroll down a little further, it's going to say main temperature unit default Kelvin. Well, we don't actually want it in Kelvin. We want it in imperial, right? So if we scroll up, we can look at the parameters, and there is a one called units, which is optional and lets us set imperial. And then it says standard units will be applied by default. So that means if I'm in here, I can add a new key in here called units and the value of imperial. And now when I send my API request, I'm going to have the temperature come back in Fahrenheit. Okay, so we've got all of the data that we're looking for. So now we need to take everything that we just practiced in Postman and figure out how to get it into our JavaScript. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into VS Code, and we've got a function in here to say, hey, document, get element by ID location. When that changes, when we change to a different location, update the HTML based off of whatever city is selected. But we do a lot of stuff in here to say, hey, go pull the temperature out based off of whatever city is selected based off of our weather data. Well, our weather data up here is static. We just hard coded those, right? We just typed in values. So that's where we want to do this differently. We want to say, hey, instead of pulling out the temperature based off of the selected city from our weather data, we want to make a fetch call out to Open Weather Map, go get the data that we're looking for and use that instead. So what we're going to do is, in order to make that fetch work, we're going to say, hey, update HTML is going to have some asynchronous code in it. So we're going to add this async word up here so we can make our awaits work with our promises. So we added.
Hey, Max.
Yep.
Can you share a live share link and for them, please?
Yeah, what if you don't have the update HTML part on yours?
You should, if all of your code is in your add event listener, like if you've got a bunch of more code in this document, get element by ID, location, add event listener, you can add the word async right here and do it there instead. If you don't have it there, then you should probably just use a copy of my code. Live stream link has been put in Zoom and Slack. Okay, so now that we've got our async word in here, we have to see what this selected city is. So let's see what's going on with that. I'm going to just console log out my selected city, go back to my code and change this in here. And let's see if I go to inspect, I'm going to get Ocean City and Syracuse because that's what I selected. Okay, so I'm going to say, hey, we want to make our fetch request. And the fetch that we're going to go to is, and then we're going to go back to Postman, go back to the first one that we made, right? The geo encoding one. And I'm going to copy this whole thing. I'm then going to go back into VS Code and I'm going to say, hey, go fetch our URL. Now this is hard coded to Ocean City. That's okay. We just want to get our data working first, and then we can modify our API call from there. So what I'm going to say is our const response is going to equal our fetch. But we need this await keyword in here because we don't want it to do anything else. We want to wait for that API call to be done. And once it's done, store it in this thing called response. Then we can get our data out of the response by awaiting our response JSON parts. And after all of that, console log out, the data. So if I save that and go back to my Chrome, when I change to anything, I should have this weird looking thing going on here. If I pop that open, I'm now getting the latitude and longitude information from Open Weather App. So I am going to stop there, but let me explain this code one more time. This update HTML is firing whenever our location changes. When our location changes, come down into here and say, hey, we're going to get a response back from the server. What is that server going to, what's going to be in that response? We're going to say, oh, wait, because we know fetch is going to take some time to run. So we're saying instead of having to use .then, just wait for our code, wait for our fetch to be in. Wait until we have the response for the request we just made. Now we paste in this URL. This URL is coming right from Postman from the first tab that we opened up. So it's going to have our latitude and longitude there. We're going to come back over here. We paste that in our big fetch, and I'm using backticks. Okay, now the fetch is actually happening, but it's coming back with the response. We need to pull some data out of the response. So we're going to do that with .json. We're saying take the response, go look in the body of the response, pull the JSON out of it, and store it into the data. Then console log out the data so we can see what's happening with it. So when we come back into Chrome, we should see our latitude and longitude if we open up this weird looking array object thing. I'm going to leave this code up and I'm going to start a poll and we're going to see where we're at. All right, who's lost? Who can I help?
Oh, me, I still couldn't get my my API key to run.
Okay, go ahead and share your screen. Let's work through it.
Is it sharing?
Yeah, yep, you're good. Sorry, I was just looking at your code. So when you hit send, what happens? Okay, so let's go back to your open weather map.
I'm just gonna move this. Okay.
And go to your username in the top right. And drop down to API keys. And copy either one of those. And then back to Postman and paste that in for the app ID. And then hit send. Did you click on the link in your email to confirm the account?
Yeah.
And did you like just do that within 15 minutes?
No, I did it when I first started. When you first told us to do it.
I don't see anything wrong in I don't see anything wrong in your URL. So I would say just give it a couple more minutes, and if it's still not working at great, we'll deal with it then. Because I don't see anything wrong in. Can you get your geolocation one to work?
That might be where I'm messing up at.
So go to that one. Yep. go click on Untitled, and then go to, you have the other tab open in Chrome for the geocoding API.
Yeah.
So scroll up to the top of that, or near the top of that, and grab that URL.
This one right here, right?
Yep.
The 1.0.
Yep. And then go back into Postman and then paste that into the URL. And then you're going to paste in your API key, hit the delete button once so that there's not a new line. Yeah, okay, and then paste your API key in there.
If I had deleted the whole thing or left the curly brackets.
You should not have the curly brackets.
Okay.
And then just hit the delete there to get it up. Yeah, perfect. And then your limit is going to be 1. And then city, state code, country code, you can replace that with Syracuse, comma, New York, comma, US.
Does that have to be capital?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And then send on that. Okay, so that's working. So just copy your API key from there and go back to the API, that one.
Okay.
There you
All right, that's what I was missing. All right, thank you.
go. No problem. Okay, we do have 10 votes, and can I answer any questions for anyone else? So the goal here is we should have our in our browser, we should be able to see the latitude and longitude information from here.
I had a quick question.
Yep.
So I just finally like made a new folder and everything, and I'm deciding to use your code now. But so do I have to change all of this code before I will be able to achieve that? Like the async, like what should I just comment out the select the city equals evt.target.value?
The only 5 lines that we added to this is we added the async here. We added in this console log selected city, and then we added the code required to get our fetch to work.
So I'm commenting out the other code that I had before. That's the question. All right, no problem. I just copy.
Okay. Christy, go ahead.
I just have a quick question. Mine is saying that I have a syntax error and it's under the semicolon for HTTP.
Go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. This desktop. Okay. Right here.
You're missing a backtick. When we fetch, our URL is always going to be a string. So on the other side.
You would think I would have gotten this by now. So
Nope, wrong spot. That's going inside the parenthesis.
So it goes in here.
Yep.
And then at the end.
Yep.
Shoot. Is that the end?
Yep. Right there. There you go.
Okay, just before I let you go, let me see. Voila, magic. Okay, thank you.
But that's not the right one.
It's not.
No, that's your current. Go back to your code.
Oh, wait a minute.
Scroll back over. You need to console log out your data, and then you'll be good to go after 38.
Oh, okay.
So everything's working. You just weren't seeing the data because you didn't have the console logged out.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. I think we're good to go here unless there are any other questions. Okay. So back in our code, now we've got this data, but we want to be able to pull data. We want to pull the information that we need out of it. So if we look, first things first, this is in an array. Why do we think this is in an array, even though there's only one thing in it? Think back to our other Ocean City example when we didn't have this limit set to 1. What happened?
Gave us multiple cities.
Exactly. So if we set this limit back to 5 and just say Ocean City, when we look at our data, it's going to have all the different ocean cities all over the world. Well, if we have multiples, it's got to be stored in an array. And so for consistency, even if we're only getting one location back, it's still storing that location in an array. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave it still on our limit 0, I'm sorry, on our limit 1, and we're still going to specify our Ocean City, New Jersey. But what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, our latitude is going to equal to the data coming back. Our data is here. Then we need to go into that array and get the 0 index out of it. Okay, so we're going to say our lat is data 0. And then once we're in that first index, we can look at the latitude.
Wait.
And we're going to do the same thing for the longitude. So const long is data 0.long.
Can we see? Oh,
Oh, LON, not LONG. Sorry, my bad. So again, we're dissecting this. We're digging into the data that's getting returned from the API and using the latitude and longitude here and pulling it out of our code right here. So we got to do one more piece here. We now need to go back to Postman, go to our second API call and copy that big URL. And now we're going to say const weather request is equal to await the fetch and paste in our URL. But because we don't want to hard code the latitude and longitude, we want that data to come from our first request, which we did right here. And our longitude is also going to come from that request. So now, now that we've got our weather request, we need to say our weather data is going to come from our weather request JSON, and then we're going to log out our weather data. So, cannot read properties undefined of 10. We're gonna, instead of calling this weather data, we're gonna call this weather info. When I called it weather data, it conflicted with the weather data object that I already had named up here. So we're just gonna call it weather info instead, so it doesn't conflict. Now, if I look open at this core thing, I'm able to get my main temperature with the feels like and all of that information there. So I'm going to leave my code up here. This is all of the new code that we've added in. Just make sure you've got your lat and your long coming from the URL, and we're going to stop and take a moment to catch up there. Reminder that this is a template literal that we're using. We can only use a template literal because we use the backticks here. But what this template literal, what the $ curly braces is saying is, instead of having the words LAT show up come up here and pull out the value from the data 0.lat. Well, where's that coming from? That's coming from the data coming from the response. Where's the response coming from? That's coming from the fetch that we made to the Geo API at OpenWeatherMap. So very important here, even if you're not following along, make sure that you're understanding this general flow of, we go to this API first, that stores it into the response. Then we take the response and get the JSON out of it. And once we get the JSON out of it, we store it in the data. Then we use that data, break out the data from the array, and get the latitude key from the object stored there and store that in a new variable called lat. We do the same thing. We take that data from our response, break the longitude out of it, and store that in a new variable called longitude. Then we take both the lat and the long, and we use that in our next call. Once we make that second API call, we store that in weather request, break the JSON out of the weather request, and store that in a variable called weather info, and then we console log out that weather info. Now, if you're lost here, but you weren't lost last night, take a minute to open up the WoW API and look at that and compare that WoW API to this code. And if you're still lost, you should be coming off unmute now, even if you're not following along and saying, the heck are we doing?
And maybe because I'm not plugging in my information, that'll be a little bit better. Because my API is not working still. But I'm following, but I'm still a little lost.
Okay, do you want to share your screen, or you want a couple minutes to see if you can catch up?
I'll take a few minutes first.
Okay. We only got 7 votes in on the poll, so take your time, catch up to this. And again, if you're just following along, there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to be asking questions here. I know this is a lot, but if you don't understand what a single letter on my screen is right now, let me know and we can talk through it.
Can you tell me again what the temperate literal is? Like, what is the category that it's under again?
It's a special kind of string.
Okay, so it's a string.
I have a quick question. Can I copy and paste in your comments? Just what I want to type them all.
What comment?
You just have a lot of different comments under the select the city equal document with the location dot value. So can I copy your comments so I can have them on my code?
Well, none of this code is actually running. This is just from the last time that we worked on this code. We were practicing with our objects. So none of that code is going to impact your code other than just the line numbers. And if you really want the line numbers to line up, then yeah, you can copy and paste them.
Oh no, I don't need them to line up. I just thought that, if I wanted to go back and read about it, but that's fine. If it doesn't have nothing to do with today, that's fine.
Yep. Eight votes in, 9 votes in. Just giving everyone one more minute.
Shoot.
Okay, I copied your code into mine, and I'm getting an error in the console.
Go ahead and share your screen.
And the only thing that is a little different with mine is because when I copied your code, I didn't copy it. Well, I put my code is a little bit different than yours, like how it is inside my
That's fine. Go
JavaScript.
ahead and share your screen. It may be a simple syntax issue.
That's exactly what it is. Okay. Okay. Can you
Okay.
see?
Yep, I can. Go to your script.js. What's happening is you're using the await keyword, which is good because that's the code that we're using. But whenever you use await, you have to tell the computer heads up, there's going to be some asynchronous stuff coming in here. So right here, right after the first equals, you have to, but outside of the parentheses, you have to put in the word async.
Oh.
And because the computer now knows, hey, there's going to be some asynchronous code running in here, it's going to give you access to this await in here. So go ahead and save the screen or save the file. Just Command S there.
Yeah, I did. Okay.
And now, oh, you might have to restart your live server.
Okay. Oh yeah. Oh, what
Just click on weather.html there.
where? Oh, up here. Oh, I'm crying.
And now if you go to your console, you should have the data. Nope, you got a different syntax error, 46.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, 40. Oh, I think I took out a print. Is it supposed to be 2 here?
No, it's supposed to be a closing square bracket inside the parenthesis. Yep, and now you need a closing parenthesis. You need both the closing square bracket and the closing.
I
Yep,
had
there you
2 double ones before. Okay, boom. Thanks.
And now you've got your coordinate weather base station main visibility right here. If you pop that open, you're going to see all of the data like the current temperature.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you are all caught up.
Thank you.
Okay, so 2 things we've got to do to wrap this up. I'm hoping we can get them done before break. So first thing is we've got our weather info here, but we're not doing anything with it, right? It's just Ocean City is still permanently 70 degrees. So what we need to do is this is the data, the big object that's coming back with all of our information in it that we care about, and we want to get that temperature working. So this is an object. We know it's an object because it's in a curly brace, and this time it's not in an array because we don't have multiple locations worth of data coming back. We just have all the information about Ocean City. So we're going to go into this object. We have to go down to the main, and then we can get out the temperature. So instead of pulling our temperature from our weather data selected city.temp, we're instead going to pull it from our weather info.main.temp. And if we come back into Chrome, it is now 79.11 degrees apparently in Ocean City.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And again, we know weather info is coming from our API, right? We did the weather request, then we parsed out the JSON, and we stored all of that in weather info. Now that we're in weather info, we look at this object coming back. That object has a key called main, and that value of main is this big object here. So we go into that, and we want to target just that temperature right there. Now we got out the 79.11, and so that's what we're going to use in our code. The weather info coming from our fetch request, go get the mean, go get the temp, and shove that into today's temperature. Danielle, question.
Question.
Danielle is first, and then I'll come back to you, Nicole.
Okay, so my question is looking at line 45, where we inputted the the link. Why did we not include the latitude and longitude? Why did we leave it in?
We did. We got the latitude and longitude coming from our first API call.
So I guess what I'm stating is in this example, why didn't we? Like, why isn't it typed in there?
So we don't want the word LAT to show up. What we are doing here is we're making this first API call. This first API call is storing the response into an object called data. We're then pulling the data, the response data out, and using the latitude and longitude from the first API call. And we store that in lat and long. So all of the first API call at this point is done. We've gotten the information out that we want, which is the latitude and longitude. Now we want to take that information from the first API call and use that information in the second API call. So when we have our lat here and we say, what is the latitude equal to? It's equal to $ curly brace. Hold up, JavaScript says that's a template literal. I'm going to go get the value of lat. What's the value of lat? That comes out of the data. Where's the data coming from? That's coming from the response. Where's the response coming from? Oh, that's coming from the first request we made to get the latitude and longitude of Ocean City.
I understand that. My question is, you know how when we were in the sandbox of Postman, we went through the steps of going and finding the actual latitude and longitude, and it came out to a physical number. Why are we not using that physical number when we're over in?
We are. So right here, when we do the first request, right, let's take a step back. In Postman, this was the first request we made, right? We said Ocean City, New Jersey, and we did that request and we got the latitude and longitude, right?
Correct.
So we took this number, we copied it, we went in here and we pasted in the number here. In our code, the first request is all up here. But now, instead of copying the response, we're storing the latitude in a variable called LAT. We are then using that variable in our second URL. So if I take this template literal and I console log it out, you're going to see this is the URL and it has the latitude and the longitude in it. How does it have the latitude and longitude in it? It's because it's using these two variables right here and dropping them into the URL.
Thank you. That fully explained it. Like once you console log it, you can see it. All right. Thank you so much.
Yep. And that's a good trick to use for any template literal, right? Sometimes you're looking at a template literal and you're like, I swear this should all be working. And you'll console log it out and be like, oh, I forgot the equal, or I had $2 in there, or something like that, because it's very easy to do something like this and not have your code change a different color and then see in the URL, oh, I accidentally left that curly brace in there. So the point of the template literal is to make it easier. But if you prefer to write your code with string concatenation, you could also write the code like this. But we're seeing how ugly this gets with all the opening quotes, all the closing quotes. Everything I just typed here is doing the exact same thing of this right here. So whenever we have that plus, we're saying, hey, I don't actually want to give you any more of the URL. I want you to go up and get the latitude from here and add it into the string. Then I have another piece of the string, and then I've got the longitude that I want to put in, and then I've got the rest of the string. So this is doing the exact same thing this is doing. It's just letting us use that template literal syntax to say, hey, instead of concatenating a bunch of things together, I'm going to use those $ curly braces, and whatever's in those $ curly braces, I want to be added into my string. So it's not actually the words LAT that's going to show up. It's the data coming back from our first call. So we are at break. What we should have at this point is, I'm just going to take out this console log. What we should have up until this point is the temperature of Ocean City showing up down to the decimal place. So can't remember when I last launched the poll, but how are we feeling? Does anyone have questions? Did we get our 78.82 to show up, or whatever temperature it is in Ocean City? Okay, so we've got one thing to do after the break, and then we're going to move on to our chat app. The next thing we have to do after the break is when we click on Ocean City and switch to Syracuse, the temperature is still 78.82. I can tell you right now in Syracuse, it is certainly not 78.82 degrees. And if we look into our API call, the problem is it's still using Ocean City. So we're going to fix that after the break, but take a break and I will see you guys at 7:25 for units.
Okay.
Nicole, go ahead. You are missing a closing curly brace on 160 that's supposed to be there. You're muted, by the way. I don't know if you're talking. But the curly brace has to be moved outside of the comment.
I was talking. Yeah. So I just put the comment here then. One second. What is? Why is it not working?
There you go.
Okay, and then one second, I gotta pull it over. Oh my gosh. One second, like this.
Okay, so
Nothing.
Oh, Walmart has this on it.
update.
Oh, my
HTML.
update. Can you
So
see this now?
Yeah, but that's my code. Go to your code.
Okay.
And scroll up. Your HTML is lowercase.
This one? It's supposed to be lowercase, right?
Well, this is uppercase, this is lowercase. So it doesn't matter.
Oh, I was looking at the U.
There you go. Save that.
Okay.
Okay, so now you've got a different problem. Invalid API key. It's 401 unauthorized.
Okay,
so go back to your code. And right there.
I'm missing half of it.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Anyone else need help before we dive back in?
Can you still hear me? Actually, Let me just make sure sorry, because my mouse thing is slow. If I just run into Postman, I just want to make sure I have the right one then. So This is the one with the 2.5 in it. Am I missing the one that's supposed to have the 1? Or
Yeah, the 1.0
Yeah.
is missing your app ID.
this one?
Yep.
Even though I have this down here?
Yeah, but hit the send button and it's not going to work.
Okay. Let's see what. Okay, and then Command C.
And there you
Okay,
go.
now this one. Command C. And then I'll just put it over here. Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else need help before we dive back in? Okay, so now we've got a problem of, hey, we just went through all of this stuff to get our data to be dynamically coming from our latitude and longitude, but we got Ocean City hard coded here. So when we come back over and we change it to San Francisco, it stays at Ocean City's temperature. No matter which one we pick, we're always getting Ocean City coming back in our console log. So we need to get the whatever one is selected. But wait, up here, we already have selected city and we're console logging that out. So if we look at selected city, Ocean City's coming out, and then Syracuse, and then San Francisco. But now we've got the opposite problem of we need not just Ocean City, we need the state and the country that it's in. Okay, well, why did we do that in the first place? Because our weather data had keyed Ocean City, Syracuse, and San Francisco. It didn't key San Francisco, CA, Syracuse, New York, Ocean City, New Jersey. So what we need to do is say, where is that selected city coming from? That's coming from document get element by ID location. Okay, document, that's meaning our HTML document, and we're using the value. So we're going to go all the way back to our index.html, and now we've got the value in here. We want to make these values look like the value that we want to pass into Open Weather Data. So we're going to say Ocean City, NJ. We're going to say Syracuse, New York, and we're going to say San Francisco, CA. Now that we've modified those values, when we go back to our script, instead of passing in Ocean City, New Jersey, we're going to pass in the selected city. So now when we're in here and I pick, oh, I don't know what that is. Cannot read 57. So we got an error on 57. Oh, I'm going to comment out the today's details section. So the problem is it's trying to read the weather data, but it's confused because the selected city now no longer matches the data up here. So that's okay. Sometimes in order to get our API data to work, we need to migrate off the weather data that we have hard coded in. So now that I'm in here, Ocean City, 77 degrees. And if I change it to Syracuse, it's 62. If I go to San Francisco, it is 73. So this is where we're going to stop it for now. If you wanted to, you could go in and use another API call here to get the forecast data and make the forecast show up. That would be the bonus points. But I promise you guys no additional homework for this week, so I'm not making a homework assignment for this. However, if you want to get more practice with the APIs and making the API data show up, you could get our forecast section working and also get our precipitation, humidity, and wind working based off of the data that we already have. But for now, we're going to start a poll, and the poll is just to make sure that when you change to a different location, you're getting that temperature. So if you have or haven't gotten to that point, it doesn't matter. What you need to do is read through this code and be able to explain it. Be able to look at this line of code and say, retrieve the option value from the select drop down in our HTML. Then we probably don't need to do a console log, but we need to say make an API request to open weather map to convert the selected city to lat long. Parse the response from the API to get the JSON body data out. Using the response data from the API, retrieve the lat and long from the array and object. Make another API call to get the weather data using the lat and long from the first API request. Parse the JSON from the second API request. And finally, update HTML to use the temperature coming back from the second API request to bury 2 hours, 1 hour, 2 hours. Bury the let's say to unnest the data out of the object. So this is the level that you guys need to get to, right? Is being able to read this line of code and tell me in English what that comment should say. Because I would prefer you not code along with me and just make sure that you're able to read this line of code and tell me in English what it's doing. That's the level of understanding that we need to get to. So even if you decide, hey, I've been coding along fine up until this point, but I'm just going to try watching for once, or maybe I'm going to try going through this code and instead of writing the code, I'm going to try and write the comments as Max writes that line so I understand it all from there. That's going to be a better level of understanding and get you closer to what it's going to be like in the workforce. Than trying to code along and get every letter right, because it's so easy to get hung up on the syntax. But the syntax, believe it or not, is not the hard part. The hard part is knowing what lines to write. And so if you're able to write out this comment and truly understand the line, then when the pressure's off and you don't feel like you need to keep up, it's going to be much easier to code something like this out. With all that said, Christy, go ahead with your question.
My question was, I know that you added comments, but some of these comments, can we take some out so that, like the older ones from what we did before?
Absolutely. Kill whatever comments you don't want in there.
Okay.
Larry, question.
Yeah, mine is kind of broke now. Can I share my screen?
You sure can.
I'm getting this error after changing.
You're only sharing your Postman? For everyone remote, Larry not only brought a portable monitor today, he brought a whole like 28-inch monitor with a okay, so top one is going to be, oh no, that's Chrome extension. Okay, so cannot read properties of undefined reading forecast script 205. All right, so let's take a look at your code.
I'm on the right side. So I changed those Syracuse things.
Yep, those look good.
And I commented out this bold right there.
Okay, yep. And then let's see where you're making your API call. Scroll up a little bit to the. So you've got Syracuse, New York hard coded in your URL.
Oh.
That isn't causing the problem, but that should be a $ curly brace selected city. And let me just do a quick. I don't see anything else wrong there. So save and let's see what the error is again in the browser. I think we're still going to have it. So it's right when you load the page. If you change it to a different city, does it work? Interesting. It did because it changed the temperature.
Right, so my 5-day forecast, I had stuff changing based on what the city was.
Yeah, so
That kind of looks like
that's
my
gonna be
problem.
because we changed the selected city to include the state. So what you are probably going to want to do, go back to your VS Code and all the way up in your weather data, the initial stuff that we hard coded, instead of just LA or Ocean City or whatever, you're going to want to say Syracuse, New York. But because you've got that comma in it, you've got it right. You have to put the object keys in quotes.
Thank you.
So Larry had built-in forecast information that was hard coded out, but because we changed the value in the dropdown, it was trying to look for Syracuse, New York in the hard coded values and couldn't find it in there. And so we had to go back and update the hard coded values to make sure it included the state. Okay, I'm going to launch a poll. How far did we get? Did we get it working? Are we understanding it? Did I just confuse you even more? Do you want Ryan to come back? Where are we at? By the way, Ryan will be, I believe he will be at office hours to help with the New York Times project. I'm going to tentatively say 5 p.m. on Sunday for office hours, but I'm waiting for confirmation from Ryan. Once I hear back from him, I will shoot out an announcement in Canvas with a final time unless he gets back to me in the next 45 minutes. Are we feeling more confident with APIs? Are we understanding how we could use an API in our code? Are we understanding getting that data back, pulling the data apart and shoving it into our HTML? Are we understanding the JavaScript?
Giving me a problem. God.
I have a question too.
Why?
You want to share your screen, Wayne?
Oh yeah, sure.
And Nicole, I'll come to you next.
So I'm trying to get my code. There's extra stuff in there. So every time
Yeah. So you want to take out this entire 65 to 74 and just call update HTML instead.
every time I do that, it
Nope, too far. 74, not 75. Okay, and now we've got one other problem. You're calling update HTML in all caps here, and then you're calling it in all lowercase here. So let's go up and see what it's actually called. So it's called update HTML in all caps, and you already have a add event listener change right here that's calling it properly. So go back down and just delete 63 all the way down to 68. Okay, now you should be good to go. Okay, so you've got an issue on 41 reading lat. So let's go. Actually go back to your console and pull up your console a little bit more. I think you've got an error higher above. So just click on console here, and that's going to make it go full screen. Okay, so now it's saying 400 bad requests. So we need to look at what's happening in the URL to make that request go bad. And what we've got is Ocean City, New Jersey, but now it says 08226 New York. And because of that, it's really confused. So let's go to your HTML. And index.html. And what we're supposed to be sending in for the values is just the city and state. It is not the zip code. So take the zip code out there. One more for the space. Take that space out. Yep. Okay. Now let's go back to save and go back to our script.js. Okay. And we are looking, the selected cities coming in fine. Oh, nope, you were in the right spot. Selected city here is working great. Now let's scroll over a little bit. But you're still sending in New York. We don't want to send in New York. We want that value to come back from selected city. So go ahead and take out the comma New York. And save. Okay, and now let's see if that's going to work. Okay, so now we've got a 400, but look at where we're 400ing. We're 400ing on the weather API. So we're making progress. Now the latitude and longitude is working, and we can see that data coming in here. But the problem is somewhere within this weather API. So let's go back to that. That's line 44. And 44 has your lat in there perfectly fine, but look at your longitude. You've got a negative in there. That negative is going to come in from the long itself. So we don't want this negative in there. So delete that one and save. And now it's 297 degrees in Ocean City. It's never been that hot in Syracuse, maybe in Ocean City, but never Syracuse. So now you just have to get your units fixed, and that's a really quick one. If you go back to your code, right here, after the question mark, after this question mark, put units equals imperial ampersand.
Imperial.
Shift 7. You need the ampersand in there, the and sign.
Oh.
And save and take a look. I don't think that's saved. There you go. Oh, that's a little bit cooler.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, so we're half and half. We've got 10 people total, 5 people caught up, 5 ready to move on. Do we have any other questions? Next week is fully virtual. You're stuck with me for a while. Next week, we move on to React. We did discuss a new benchmark. So if you are 10 homework assignments behind or more, that's kind of our warning light that starts to go off. If you're 15, more than 15 behind, that's when we start talking about academic warning. And then if you're 20 behind, that's kind of the highest threshold. So with all of that said, we are going to turn a blind eye and not look at assignments until Monday morning, other than grading. So if you've turned things in, I will catch up on that. But if you are more than 10 homework assignments behind, this is your weekend to get caught up. So New York Times project is your only new homework assignment. Everything else you want to get caught up. And if you're struggling in class now, it could very well be because there are concepts covered in free code camp that you haven't practiced with, or there are homework assignments that you just needed to practice with that concept. So don't panic yet. You've got the weekend to get caught up, but that's kind of the numbers that we're looking at there and saying, hey, if you're more than 10 homework assignments behind, we really are probably going to be concerned and start reaching out for one-on-one and getting some help, not only from me, but also from Jason, and making sure that we can get you caught back up. With all of that said, I think it is a very stupid idea to start a project as large as the chat app 40 minutes before the end of class on a Thursday. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up some of our weather app code. I'm going to grab my pencil and mark through all the code so we can understand how this flow is working, do one final thorough explanation, and then we'll call it a little early tonight. Sound good to everyone?
Yes.
Cool. Any questions in general about anything?
Yeah, can you help me? I've been trying to catch up just writing code, so I wasn't really like trying to raise my hand because I was way behind. But
That's
can you
fine.
just look at mine?
Yep. What are we looking at?
So yeah, I never been to Jamaica, but I just want to go. But I wasn't sure how to write it for like state. And then if I go back to my script.js, here, I'll just show you my go live. It's still not working.
Okay, so go to your console, because it could be telling us why it's not working without us seeing that error message. Okay, so it's saying 400 bad requests. And that's happening. Okay, so let's go. That's happening on the weather one.
So I think I got the long part. I was confused because I think you said long and there was lat. So I wasn't sure if this one was supposed to be a G on it or if this one was supposed to.
So let's take a pause there.
Can I be quiet, please?
This data 0 long has to match what's coming from our response all the way from the API. So because the API has LON in it, we have to use LON right here. However, we can name it whatever variable we want over here. So we could call that the spot in the globe #1 and use that down here and it would work fine. So what needs to be the same is the LON here, but then whatever we use here, as long as it matches here, we're good to go. So your problem isn't in any of that. It is actually because you're missing an ampersand right there.
This? Hold on, me.
Yep, put an ampersand in there and save. Save and go back to your browser. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to draw on your screen. Ooh, nice and toasty.
Yay. Oh no. So this is it. This is the last part I'm supposed to be at.
Yep, you just need to get your units working, and that's probably going to be a quick fix too. Go back to your code.
Okay.
And scroll all the way to the end. Oh, you've got a capital U in units instead of a lowercase u. Right. 136 towards the end of that line. You just need a lowercase u in units.
I don't even see units, but let me see.
Oh, no, go back. Right here. No.
Oh.
Okay, there you go. You got it.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Don't forget to save. Hack Upstate is certainly not next week because we don't have a Hack Upstate scheduled, but Zach, you were thinking of Open Hack with Mike. I am fine canceling class for that. Let me just start a quick poll to make sure that you guys are all fine with that. Because I do think there's a lot of value in you attending that.
Yeah, I miss my Open Hack friends.
While he's doing that, getting the poll together, study group, who wants to meet up, tomorrow, Saturday, early Sunday?
I'm down for tomorrow morning, Christy, if you want to.
And you guys are welcome to use this Zoom link so you don't run into any time issues. Time meeting length issues, I mean.
When is Open Hack?
Next Tuesday. And if we do decide to cancel class, I will be at Open Hack, and we can also use that as an opportunity to do like in-person one-on-ones. If you have anything that you want to cover or work on your capstone while you're at Open Hack. But either way is completely fine with me. Swear to God, if you guys tie this poll again, I'm going to kill someone.
If they tie it, I'll just vote.
Larry and Doug are in person, so they can see the live poll results just because I have them up on the monitor.
It's neck and neck.
Open Hack is 6 o'clock on Tuesday. No, we've only got 8 votes in. Everyone, take a look at your polls. We are deciding of
Now,
whether
why would you make anything less time with Max?
Question everyone, what you would rather do, Open Hack? I don't want to be
I
the
want an Open Hack, but I could use some more time with Max.
Max is gonna be there though. So
I am going to be at Open Hack.
so
What time is it over?
It normally wraps up around 8-ish.
yeah,
And
just
I'll stick around if you guys still have questions. I have no problem sticking around.
Am I working?
If we have no class, can we do a study group Tuesday, y'all?
Yep. And some of the study group may be in person, and you can still do a hybrid thing as well. Whatever is fine. Oh, are you kidding me?
Did I do that? I guess I did. I just voted.
You are all trolling me. It's 50-50.
Okay, but not everybody's voted yet. Who didn't vote yet?
We've got 10 votes in.
Don't say
There's how many people do we have on the call tonight?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, so we've got 14 people on the call and only 10 people have voted. So
Come on, 4 of you.
and I don't think anyone signed in twice. So okay, we've got 11 votes in. Last chance to vote. Okay, so looks like we are going to skip class on Tuesday. Won't have any new content on Tuesday, but I will be at Open Hack. and we can still come in this room or, you know, go over to a separate section. So if you have questions with me, want to work with me one-on-one, I will be in person. And if you have questions during class time next Tuesday and will not be at OpenHack, shoot me a direct message on Slack and I'll pull out my laptop and jump in and we can work on stuff. So next Tuesday, no class, but we will, I will still be available at that time. I'll just be in person at OpenHack.
Actually, I want to be here anyway.
So I'm going to go update the schedule. And also to note, we do not have class on 6/20, which is a Monday. That is the celebrated day for Juneteenth, which is now I believe it's a federal holiday in addition to a state holiday. So we have next Tuesday off. Hopefully I will see you all at OpenHack. And then we also have the following Monday off.
Days off.
Okay. Let me just shoot a quick message to the TA so they know. Next week will be fully virtual, except Tuesday will be in person at OpenHack if you can attend. Okay, we are going to go in and do one final cleanup on this code, and then hopefully I can let you guys out of here a little early. Do you guys use the schedule? Does anyone use the schedule, or do you just go into Canvas for everything? Because I link the outline, the video, and the transcripts all on here. Yeah, this is really helpful for when you're looking for a specific class or like what day did we do this project. I've tried to list everything in like the class names in here.
Oh, yeah, that is good.
I use the transcript more than I use the videos. So
oh, that's good to hear. Does anyone else use the transcripts out of curiosity?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the way you get to the schedule, just so everyone knows, is if you're in, nope, not that one. If you're in Canvas and you, let me just switch to the student view. In the home section, there's this schedule and YouTube links. This is my one-on-one link for scheduling. And then in this schedule and YouTube links, if you pop that open, this is the whole like spreadsheet with all the links. And if you click on the link up at the top, it will open it in a new tab. And you can just get in here and see everything and link right to the transcripts, video, and all of that stuff. Oh, the other thing that we talked about, weekly feedback form. That is one assignment I am going to create. If I am teaching, it is going to be a requirement to fill out that feedback form once a week. If there is a guest instructor, we are really going to ask you guys to try and fill it out daily, because I know there was some feedback for Ryan, and if Ryan got that feedback just a little bit earlier on in his teaching, it may have been easier to modify things or teach that content a little differently. So that feedback form, I will create an assignment for it, but if you are in Canvas, it is linked right here, and I'm going to drop it in the Zoom chat and Slack as a reminder to please fill it out, because it is the end of the week. I will say, if you want to wait to catch up on your homework and then fill it out on Sunday, that is completely fine, but we're just asking that you guys fill that out by Sunday. Okay. So all that said, let's do our one final code cleanup. I keep on saying I'm going to let you out of here early, and then I don't. Okay, so this weather data, we're not really using this weather data anymore, right? Because the temperature we're pulling in from Open Weather Map. So we could delete all of this, but I am going to leave this commented out just as a reminder of how we would structure our data if we were making the data ourselves. Okay, now we're going to come in here and just start nuking out any console logs that you don't need. Okay. Starting from the top here, I'm gonna actually try and do a split screen. Come on. You can do it. No, not that. Okay. But I want to. Oh, come on. This one.
Really
Go
quick
over here.
question, Max.
That one. Okay, there we go. That's what I wanted. Yes, go ahead, Nicole.
You see the little small one of the code that your mouse is over? How do we get rid of that?
Is that on yours or is that an extension that I have enabled?
It's on all of ours.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like a map to read.
Yeah, if you go into settings and do a search for scroll.
It's, I think they call it the mini map.
Mini map. Here it is. So you go code up at the top, down to preferences, over to settings. That's going to open this tab. Do a search for mini map and just check that off. And now it should be gone. If you want it gone, not telling you you should turn it off, just saying that you can turn it off.
What is the mini map? That when you guys see like if you see a small version of the code.
Oh, yeah, on the side.
Yeah. So like if you know, when you look at code for a long period of time, you know, like, oh, this is this section that's ultra indented. So you can actually click on it and it will scroll you right to that section of code. But if you don't like the mini map, you are welcome to turn it off. Okay. First things first, we're gonna start with our JavaScript. Our JavaScript, we've commented out all this weather data, so we're going to ignore that. Our first line of JavaScript that the code actually runs is this document get element by ID. Because it has document in it, we know it's referencing our HTML. So we're saying get the element. What's the element? That's any one of our tags over here. So go find the element location. Okay, location happens to be a select. So from the select, what we do is we say add an event listener. Okay, well, there are a lot of different events, but an event is anytime the user interacts with a page on our interacts with the HTML. What event listener do we care about? Do we care about when they click on something? Do we care about when they scroll the page? Do we care about when they press a letter? No, the event that we care about is the change. That change is a parameter in the add event listener. The add event listener takes two different parameters or arguments. One is the event that we care about, the one that we're listening for, and the other is a function. And that function, when is that function going to run? When the event changes. When the change event happens, go run this function. Okay, well, what's this function? This function is update HTML. It knows to run update HTML down here because we put it in the parentheses after it. Now, why are the parentheses after it empty? Because update HTML does not take any parameters. So when we go to run update HTML, we don't need to put any arguments in for those parameters because update HTML doesn't need any additional information to run. If it did, if update HTML needed some input, we would put those parameters in here. And then whenever we called update HTML, we would have to add in that additional data. Okay, now we go into our update HTML. What's the update HTML going to do? First things first, we make a new variable called selected city. What are we storing in selected city? We're going and getting our element by ID, again, location. That is this big select here. And what we care about is the value. Now, get element by ID does need some more information to run. So we put in the argument there of location. Location matches the ID here. We're good to go. Now go get the value. Okay, what's the value? It's whatever the value is in our HTML that we just selected. So if San Francisco is selected, we're going to get San Francisco, CA. If we select Ocean City, we're going to get Ocean City, New Jersey. Great. Now we forget about this whole line of code, and we know that selected city is storing whatever the string is in the value over here, based off of what got selected. Okay, now we know what city was selected. Now we come down and we make our first API call. The first API call we're making, we're going to store in response. Wherever we store always goes on the left side of the equals. And then we're going to say, wait. What we're doing is we're saying, hey, this API call could take a while to run, but we don't care. Take your time. Don't run any of this code down here until this is done running. That's what this await is saying. And in order to be able to use this await keyword, we have to tell it, hey, update HTML is an asynchronous function. There is going to be some code that is going to be awaited in here. Okay, now we're going to fetch. Fetch is built into JavaScript. Fetch requires at least one parameter, and that parameter is the URL. What are we going to fetch? Hey, we're going to use a template literal, and we're going to pull this API directly from the Open Weather Map documentation. Okay, now we're going to go through. Whole point of this API is to pass in the city information and pull out the latitude and longitude that Open Weather Map has for us. So we're going to query the selected city. Okay, where's selected city coming from? That's coming from our value. We know our value is coming all the way from over here. But how does the computer know that we want Syracuse, New York to show up here instead of the word selected city? That's why we used our backticks. Our backticks are saying, hey, this is called a template literal, and we are going to use this $ curly braces to say replace everything that's in that $ curly braces with whatever the value is from here. How do we know it's coming from this value? Because it's flowing from here down to here and eventually into this whole section here. Okay, great. But now we've got another problem. This response came back and it's a big thing. What do we care about from the response? We want to go to the response and pull the JSON out of the body of the response. But that action is another asynchronous thing that's running in the background. So what we want to do is we want to say, wait for it to be done parsing that JSON out. Now give us the data. Now that we've gotten all the data, we want to go console log it and see what that data looks like. That data looks like this. So the first thing we notice, there are some square brackets there. Those square brackets are telling us all of this data is in an array. Why is it in an array? Because it's possible that the API is going to return back multiple cities that it found for the location that we put in. So we're going to open that array, and we see index 0 is where we want to get this data. We see our target in sight. Now we need to dig through it. So the first thing, get through the array. So we put the bracket 0 here. Now we've busted into the array and we've got the object. But the object is this big thing with name, lat, long, everything. We want to pull out the lat and the long. So we use lat and long, and we store them in our own variables here. Now we don't have to do this. We could take this and copy it right in to our URL, and that would work fine. But our URL is long enough, so we store these in 2 other variables to make it easier to reference down the road. Okay, we've got our lat and long. We're going to do the exact same thing here, except instead of going to the geo section of the API, we're going to go to the weather section of the API. And we're going to pass in our latitude and our longitude in addition to our whole API key. Okay, great. What now? We need to parse the data. We need to store that data, and then we can console log it out and see our other weather info here. Okay, there's cloud information, there's the coordinates, there's the name, but here's the data that we want to get to. Okay, how do we dive into that? Well, we are going to go into the weather info and go into the main object. Why do we not need square brackets here? Because this is one big object. Our first call put the object in an array, but here it's one big object. So we take this object we dive into it and we pull out the mean, and then we pull out the temperature, and we take all of that and shove whatever's in the right side, which is going to be the final temperature that we're looking for, into the element called today's temp. And now that we've got that whole element, we want to go inside that element and shove the HTML of whatever the temperature is inside of it. Okay, now that we've done all of that, we hit the end of our curly brace, which means we're finally done updating our HTML. So the last final thing we're going to do is we're going to run update HTML once, which means when this page first loads, it's going to go update the HTML and do everything that is inside of that function.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes.
Can you go back to the console real quick?
Yep.
So I see how it's array. How do you know that it's an object? Because it says.
Because they're curly braces.
That's what I was wondering. All right.
And if you hover over it, it will actually say object.
Oh, okay.
Even though it has an array thingy, what's that?
This is an array that has an object inside of it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so the array is the
Square
other one.
brackets and the curly
Right.
braces or brackets are the object.
okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, and I just wanted to go over this one more time. So I noticed yesterday, we've been using fetch. Now we're using const response await. Is that what I'm saying?
You're seeing this?
Okay, well, yeah, that one and the other ones, like all of them are const. So now const response, oh, well, there is fetch there. Okay, so we're just putting, so that's still a fetch, but we're just putting that on the front end of the fetch, and that's what makes it asynchronous.
The await is what tells it, hey, you don't need to use .then, you can use await instead of .then.
Oh, okay, so it's await instead of .then.
Correct. And because you're using await, now you can use const response instead of having to get the response in the .then. So this line of code is exactly the same.
Mhm.
Both of these do the exact same thing.
But because we use the await, we're doing it asynchronously.
Which means we can store it in a regular variable. This is the syntax that I prefer. This is the newer syntax. And it's the one that means that we don't have to get into callback hell. Because if we are in here and we do another fetch like this, now we have to do a .then in here and get the weather response out. And now this is really messy compared to this, where we make an API call and deal with it, and then we make another API call and deal with it here. So this is the exact same thing of doing both this and this.
Okay. You told us that too, and when we had that study group. Okay.
So I'm gonna just take this and shove it at the end of the file, comment it out. So you guys have it in case you fetch syntax using promise is with then instead of async. Oh wait.
So the const what is it? The const data await and the other const, that's a promise too?
The await is what deals with the promise for you. So you can think of await. So when you do this fetch, what fetch is going to return to you is a promise. It is
Okay,
promising you that that data will be there eventually.
okay,
So there are two ways of saying, okay, when that data is ready, here's what I want to do with it. The first one is to say, when that data is ready, then give me it so I can work with it.
right.
Or you can say, hey, go fetch that data, and when I get the promise, wait. And when that data is ready, then shove it in response and keep on running on this code.
Okay,
So the first way we use promises is saying, hey, go do this thing. And when you are ready, then I would like you to do this next thing.
all right.
Or you can say, hey, go do this fetch. I'm still going to get a promise. But instead of saying, then I would like you to do this stuff, we're just going to say, wait. Wait for that data to be ready. And when that data is ready, go ahead and put it in the response.
Okay. Okay, how we saw it on the slides was different, so I think I kind of, embedded the slides in my brain, but I'd have to unembed it out of my brain.
Well, you don't have to. If you like the
I
.NET
like this
syntax,
better. I like this better. If I can just get the ticks together in the ampersand, the dollar sign, the
template literal.
Yes, if I can just grasp that concept, then I'll be fine with this. But yeah.
Yeah, so I think the question that Danielle asked tonight is a really valid one. Take this whole thing and just shove it in a console log. Because then you see, hey, what's coming out here is Ocean City, New Jersey. Well, how's that coming out? Because it's dropping in the value of selected city right between the Q equals and that comma.
Is that because that's what was originally in the URL when we started it? Oh, so it's based on the drop down and not what we originally put in the URL.
Well, it's based off of selected city. What is selected city? Selected city is coming from the location select and pulling out the value.
So whatever we have selected on our website, that's what's gonna console log out at the time. So if it was switched to Syracuse.
So selected city comes up to this selected city. This selected city is going to location, which is coming over to the select over here, and it's pulling out the value of whatever is selected. So now Ocean City, New Jersey is going to come in here and be equal to whatever selected city is, which is now going to drop it into the URL for us here.
Okay. And that's the thing that applies for the so the latitude and the longitude depends on the selected city too, right?
It does, because the selected city is impacting our first API call, and our first API call is feeding data into our second API call.
So this is probably jumping ahead a little bit. So this is how we're going to have to call whatever these books are we want to put on our
Sure is.
Oh Lord. Okay. Okay.
Just one more template literal example for you. If I say pet equals dog up here, and I console log out, I love, and I want the word dog to show up there. I'm going to do my $ curly braces and then keep on typing whatever I want to show up. Sorry, let's make this more accurate. Okay, so now I'm in here. My pet is storing the word dog. So when I put this $ curly brace in here, it's going to say, I don't want the word pet to show up. I want the word dog to show up. So when I look at this in my console, it is going to say, oh, come on, Max. I love dog and not cats.
So, okay, so I think this is okay, so the thing about earlier on when we were doing JavaScript, it was, well, it wasn't supposed to be var, but it was let, and then it was like my var equals, and then let's say 5. And then when you wrote it out to appear in the console, then it was either adding the 5s or whatever it's going to do. This with the $ and the curly braces is more of is this like a JSON? So you're putting
Nothing
it,
to do with JSON.
no? But you're pulling the information from the internet instead of the variables that you put up.
I can, but right here, I am not pulling the word dogs from the internet. I'm just pulling it from another variable.
Right. Well, I mean, like for selected city and latitude. So when we're working with the information that we're pulling, the data that we're pulling, we're using this and pulling in data via the API so that appears in our information the same way we were doing when we first started learning the JavaScript. It's basically, so these are all variables.
This is how you can use a variable in a string. And this are going to output the exact same thing. So the way you need to think of a template literal is not about JSON. It's not about any other data types. It's just looking.
Variable in a string.
It is just putting a variable in a string.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I said I was going to let you out early. I was hoping it was more than 4 minutes early, but.
Sorry.
Does anyone have any lingering questions about let, const, or template literals, or var? Go ahead, Wayne.
I'm gonna close this out.
Oh, you want to share your screen?
Yeah, yes.
Yep, go for it. You guys are welcome to get out of here. I will stick around and answer any questions, but you guys are welcome to leave.
Max, read my chat.
Good night.
Read my chat, Max.
Good night, everybody.
Yep, pretty much, Nicole. Nicole said, basically JavaScript is about reading. The more you understand, you can just clearly read it. And yes, that is, you do get to the point where you are reading JavaScript the way the computer is running the JavaScript, and that's what really clicks.
Come on, where is it? Doesn't want to open.
Okay. Everyone have a good night. I'm going to rest my brain.
Good night. Night.
I'll do it a different way because it's not opening.
Today is Thursday. You guys are off for the weekend. Make sure you catch up on assignments. Next week is fully virtual except Tuesday, which will be only for Open Hack, and I will see everyone there.
Okay, so it's just a simple question, which is a weird one, but